Well, I'm so glad that you're all here today. It's wonderful to have you in the audience. Tonight we're talking about the roadmap to college, strategies your 8th through 10th graders need in order to succeed. And I can't think of a better expert to have here with me this evening than Jen Foldvary. Jen, welcome.
Thank you, Anne.
I'm really glad that you're here too. And I have to tell you all that Jen is amazing. She has such a strong background in college admissions. I'm lucky to say that she's a consultant here with me at Educational Connections. And so every day she's working with kids one-on-one to help them really build out their list of schools and be strategic and not just crafting that list, but making sure that they differentiate themselves from other students in this very competitive landscape, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But a little more about Jen. She's a former admissions evaluator at University of Toledo and has worked in a private school at high school where she worked with kids, all of them applying to colleges. And also, in addition, Jen has been a classroom teacher, which I absolutely love. She has a BA in education and a master's degree in education from the University of Toledo. So Jen, I'd love for you to kick us off this evening and tell us a little bit about the situation with college admissions right now.
Well, there's lots of changes going on right now. So many changes. There are just so many students that are submitting applications right now because of all the changes. Most schools went test optional, which means ACT, SAT, after COVID hit, and that has encouraged more students to apply to college that may have been out of their reach due to their test scores. Maybe they weren't happy with their test scores before, but now that they don't have to submit them, hey, let's go ahead and apply to more schools. More students are also applying to more schools because the Common App has made it easier. So in the Common App, in case you don't know what that is, and you know that'll be something you'll learn down the road, but it's the Common Application is a universal application that's used by over 1,000 colleges worldwide. Some students complete, or on the application, students complete a profile which includes information on their classes, they're taking, their grades, extracurricular activities, an essay, and then they add the colleges they want to apply to on it. And each college will also have an additional supplement section that a student will complete. Frequently, students will, when they look at the Common Application and they see all these other schools that use it, they're saying, oh, well, I've already got this application filled out, so why not send it to this school as well? Which kind of shows that, you know, more and more students are applying to more schools because of that. So this is kind of the reason why we need to, you know, stand out and on your college applications.
Yeah, you're right. It's just so different now than it even was just 5 years ago. That's for sure. And the data in this graph really speaks to that. So when I think of college admissions and I think of younger students, Jen, and that's who we're here to talk about tonight, 8th, 9th, 10th graders, I think that you can either be controlled by the process or you can control the process, that there's really two different avenues that you can take. And obviously, we want to empower students and their parents to control the process, to make it a lot less stressful, because that is, you know, something that can happen. You can have a strategic approach. It can be less stressful by starting early, and life can be a lot easier. So tell us a little bit about why that's so important, this idea of starting earlier than your junior year.
Sure. Starting early will reduce the stress. So if you're proactive, you're going to put yourself in a better position for when it's time to apply to colleges. So you typically have more time during freshman and sophomore year. You're not bogged down by tougher classes like that you start getting during junior and senior year. And so now's the time to take advantage of that. We certainly don't want to wait until it's too late. You know, I've worked with so many students during their junior and senior year who wish they would have gotten better grades earlier on, or taken more challenging classes, or gotten more involved in extracurricular activities during their earlier years in high school. So now's the time that we can start working on that so we don't have any regrets a little bit later.
Yeah, and that speaks to the importance of really being strategic. And so let's talk about that in detail this evening. And let's start out with high school course selection. Sometimes we kind of let our kids just sign up for any old course, or the counselor might make a recommendation, but it's actually important to be even more thoughtful than that tell us a little bit about why course selection really matters.
Well, and colleges want to see that students challenge themselves in high school. So now is the time to develop a four-year plan and to set academic goals for yourself. In addition to your core classes that you're going to take in high school, and those will be, dictated by each of the high schools. Mostly their core classes are like your math, English, science classes. We encourage students to take courses that pique their interest so that they get a feel for what they might want to major in college down the road. And we also tell students to challenge themselves with advanced level courses like AP or IB or honors classes, depending on what your high school offers. Dual enrollment even. If your selective colleges want to see that students are pushing themselves and excelling in these courses. One thing I should mention though is that students don't need to take every AP and honors class that their school offers. So if you're a math or science kid, take AP biology, AP chem, AP calculus classes. If you want to challenge yourself with more classes, you can take AP language. If you want, you can go for it. But if it's too much, just focus on the areas that you're good at and that you're interested in. You definitely want to challenge yourself, but you don't want to kill yourself either. And also make sure that you're opening doors for yourself. Don't box yourself in. For example, one thing you might want to consider is taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade, or even some students are even doing it in 7th grade now, so you can get ahead in math. By having an academic plan early on, you'll be setting yourself up for more opportunities in the future. And if you're not sure where to start, we can help you with it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jen. All right, so we know that course selection is super important in the rigor of classes, but what about grades? And how does it equate to unweighted versus weighted? I know that there's often confusion for students and parents.
Right. So colleges generally consider a student's GPA and a college prep program to be one of the most important criteria for college admission. Once you start 9th grade, everything starts to count. So you need to start off on the right foot by establishing a good GPA. And that first semester GPA kind of sets the tone for the rest of your high school career. So if it's lower than you want it to be, you're going to spend the next few semesters trying to recover. Because students generally complete college applications in the fall of their senior year, your GPA at the end of junior year is very important. So let's talk, you mentioned weighted versus unweighted GPA. An unweighted GPA is calculated on a 4.0 scale, and it treats all courses equally, regardless of difficulty. So for an example, an A in 9th grade English counts as the same as an A in AP language, okay? A weighted GPA takes course difficulty into account, and it's often measured on a scale of 0 to 5. So for example, an A in an advanced course might be worth 5 points, while an A in a standard course might be worth 4 points. Colleges typically consider both weighted and unweighted GPAs, but how they use them depends on the school. So colleges value weighted GPAs because they provide insight into the student's willingness to challenge themselves academically. When a student has a strong weighted GPA, it can positively impact their chances of admission, particularly if the college emphasizes rigorous coursework and values students who go beyond the standard curriculum. On the other hand, unweighted GPAs are primarily used to compare applicants from different schools with varying grading systems by putting them all in one standard measurement tool. So it's important to understand that colleges will look at your school's profile. Every school has a profile. Colleges know where to find them. A lot of times the counselors will send them to, along with your high school transcripts, or they can access them on your website. It's important to understand that they're looking at your school profile and how the students at your school perform. And this is going to compare you to others, and they're going to compare you to students at your school, not other applicants from different schools.
That's a great point, Jen, because I think a lot of times we look at these national databases that will say this range of GPA, but that's on a national scale. And really, you're being compared to other students at your school. That's such a good point. Okay, so we know that course selection is vital and getting help with course selection before you sign up for those courses. And usually January or February is really important so that you have a clear path. We know that grades are really important, and especially challenging yourself as much as possible. And we know also that what you do outside of school is really important too. Why do colleges care what you do outside of school, like your extracurriculars and your hobbies?
Well, colleges want to see, they want to know how you're spending your time outside of the classroom. So they're interested in knowing what makes you tick. This is especially important if you're applying to highly selective schools, because there are so many kids that have the perfect GPA and the perfect test scores. But what do you do that sets you apart from everybody else? That's what's important. So now's the time, early on, to find your passions, get out there and try something new, explore options, and start building your resume, start building your extracurricular profile. You don't need to join every club that's out there. Back in the olden days, I like to say the olden days, students used to join as many clubs and activities as they could to pad their resumes. It's not really about how much you do. It's about the quality and the level of engagement in what you're doing. Colleges want to see depth and breadth. So the Common Application, which we mentioned before, gives students 10 slots to fill out their list of activities that they're involved in. Students don't need to fill in all 10 slots, okay? Schools would rather see students have a few meaningful, robust experiences rather than just having a couple of little things that they just threw on there because they, felt like they needed to add some extra stuff to their application. So it's important for students to start keeping track of these activities early on. It doesn't have to just be school stuff. It can be, things like sports or lessons that you've taken, or maybe you have a job, any church or community activities. When I work with students, I provide an activities and awards tracker that we share, and it kind of mimics the type of questions that you see on the Common Application. So we make sure that this list stays up to date so that when it comes time for them to complete their college applications, everything is right there on the list and ready to go.
Jen, have you ever had a situation where one of your students, I know my mother said to me, you better join things when I was in high school. And so I ran out and I joined a bunch of different clubs, which now we know that's not a good idea. But have you ever had students that still take that approach and they're just completely overcommitted and they
Yes.
are doing too much?
Yes, when I was a high school counselor, I had a student who, this is just one particular example. She stressed herself out so much by joining every club in order to pad her resume. She not only joined the clubs, but she had to hold a leadership position in each of those clubs. And that's what she thought colleges wanted to see. Nobody was telling her to do this. She just assumed that this is what colleges wanted to see. So by the end of her junior year, I could visibly tell that she was just miserable. She was stressed out, overwhelmed. So I sat down with her and I said, out of all the things that you're doing, what matters most to you? And we sat down together and we made a list of things that she felt like they just didn't serve her anymore. Okay. And she decided to let those things go. And she focused only on the things that brought her joy. This is what colleges really want to see. They want to know what makes you, you. And you know what? The cool thing is once she did this, I watched her flourish senior year. She loved every single minute of it. She was able to do the things that she wanted to do. She threw herself into those activities. I saw her relax more, smile more than she ever did her first 3 years of high school. And win-win, she was accepted to her top school.
I love that. That's awesome. It sounds like she was really an overachiever, but on the other hand, we have kids that don't have a lot. And we'll talk about those kids in a second when we want to tease out like their uniqueness. But what about students that think, oh, I don't know how to be a leader. I've never been a leader. How do I stand out?
Right.
What do you
And
say
not
to
every
kids
student
like
is going
that?
to be a leader. Yeah, not every student's going to be a leader. And that's okay. Colleges understand that. What schools really want to see is that the students have engaged in activities and experiences that have made a difference to them and to others. So a laundry list of clubs that you may have only attended one meeting is not what they're looking for, okay? On the Common Application, after you list your activity, you're asked to add a little description of it. And this is where you want to shine. This is almost as important as the essay that you write, which we would talk about way down the line. So for example, if you're a member of the Interact Club, okay, which is a service organization, talk about how you coordinated a service project in your community for Global Youth Service Day. Okay, giving specific examples of what's important to you is what makes you stand out, what makes you memorable.
That makes sense, Jen. And I'm sure that's a big part of your role is helping kids with that list. And as I know students that just kind of like slap it together, not thinking that there is actually a strategy behind your activities list. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about those students I mentioned that maybe they don't, we expect kids when they're 15 to know what they want to major in or know what they want to do, and they just don't. A lot of students don't. How do you tease that out and help them to find a path forward?
So we have this awesome tool at Educational Connections that I use with my students, and I love it. This is probably one of my most favorite parts of meeting with younger students. Is this program is called AchieveWorks, and it's a series of a couple of different assessments that they take. This tool is so helpful. I wish I would have had something like this in high school. I remember back, and we won't talk about how long ago, that my guidance counselor asking me, "So Jen, what do you want to major in?" And I just looked at him and I said, "Well, I don't know. You tell me. I mean, I'm sure there's something out there that would be perfect for me, but I have no idea what that is." That's where assessments like these really help. So in AchieveWorks, there's a set of 4 assessments that once taken, it gives students feedback about their personality types, their skills, their intelligences, the way they learn. And this can give so much insight into who they are. And then the best part is at the end of each assessment, there's a section that gives suggested careers for students based on their results, and then gives detailed information about each of those careers. So I'm currently working with a junior who knows she wants to go in some type of health profession, but she's just not sure what. So I had her take the assessments, and we've been kind of going over those results together. And she found out, it was cool because she found out about so many different types of careers in the health field that would work for her based on her personality and her skills and her interests. And it was super helpful for her because, she's diving in now and she's learning a little bit more about those careers that were suggested. And I can see her getting excited about that.
That's awesome. And I would think that this information really helps kids to craft their summer plans. Tell us about why summer is important and why colleges want to see what you do over the summer.
Right. So summer is a time for students to wind down, of course. Everybody needs a break. But we definitely want to make the most of our extra time that we have. So summer jobs, job shadowing somebody, in a profession that a student is interested in, or even participating in a summer enrichment program of some sort. There's so many out there. Those are great ways to show colleges that you're responsible and that you show initiative. So for example, I've had students that I've worked with in the past who were maybe interested in going into law. So they would volunteer at a law firm as a receptionist or a legal assistant over the summer to learn more about the job firsthand. I've had students interested in health professions shadowing at a hospital or helping out there in some way. So, but you don't have to, it's important for me to also mention that you don't have to have a profound summer experience though, okay? I mean, you can have a job at Taco Bell, okay? That still shows responsibility and commitment. And it basically tells colleges that you have done something with your free time other than making TikTok videos and playing on Xbox all day. Another thing you can do with your spare time is check out college campuses near you, just to get a feel of a college campus. This is going to help you identify what you want or don't want from a college campus.
Yeah, for sure. I love that idea too, Jen. I remember my kids are 4 years apart, and when I took my older son to visit schools, I made my younger one tag along, and he learned a lot about the process. Um, but I found it so helpful, whenever we're on vacation or we live in a metropolitan area, wherever we were downtown, we drive through campuses, and it's like totally no pressure. It's just kind of exploring and asking, oh, what did you think of this? You don't need to talk about, do you think you can get in with your GPA? Those aren't the questions. It's more
Right.
of like just the adventure and the experience.
Right. So I'm definitely not saying, I don't want to stress everybody out here. I'm definitely not saying that you need to start scheduling all these college visits when you're just getting your feet wet in high school. You know, some of you are just, starting out. Some of you are in 8th grade. Some of you haven't even started high school yet. So, you don't need to start scheduling college visits, but the majority of students don't know what they want to do at this age. And even if they do, many times that changes. So a good place to start is just for students to recognize the reasons for attending college and what their college must-haves are. So there's many factors to consider when choosing a college, like location, size of the school, major. That just names a few. Once a student identifies what they're looking for, it's easier for them to find their dream school. So when I first start working with students, what we do is we talk about their wants and needs, and I help them tailor a list of schools that will be a good fit for them. And we build kind of a preliminary list of schools that they might be interested in. But depending on how early I meet with the students, sometimes those interests will change, as we kind of explore and go on, throughout the high school years. So I always just tell students, maybe just start out by taking a virtual tour. That's the beauty of all this technology nowadays. Almost every college has a virtual tour of their campus somewhere on their website, usually found in the admissions page. And sometimes just by taking that virtual tour before you even set foot on campus can kind of tell you what the vibe of the school is. So, after checking out a school more thoroughly, students may find that maybe it's not the best fit for them. Or maybe they found even more than they expected, and that's exactly what they want. So again, by starting early, you have time to do your research, to do all these these visits, and whether they're virtual or campus visits, actually physically going to the campus. You have time to do that, and so if your interests change, we have time to pivot. Also, if you have some reach schools on your list, okay, we start working on a strategy to help you build a strong application for these schools, which will make you more competitive among the other applicants.
Jen, we had a question from a parent who said, should you visit those very rich schools, the ones with very low admit rates? I have feelings on that. What do you think when kids are younger, say 9th grade?
Should we visit the what school? I'm sorry.
Like if you have a reach school, that's kind of a reach for everybody with a very low admit rate. Should you make a plan to go see those schools when the student is younger?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just check it out just to see. I mean, sometimes, if you're in 9th grade, 9th or 10th grade, and you go visit this school that is, on the top of your list, and it is a reach school, it may solidify your passion even more for the school and make you even work harder to try to get to where you want to be. So, and I've also had students in the past where they've had a dream school their whole life, and I'm going to use Michigan State as an example because I have a lot of students that back when I was a counselor, a lot of students wanted Michigan State, and so they go and take the tour, and afterwards, they were like, either they were like, yes, I love this, or wow, this school is way bigger than I thought it was going to be. I'm not sure if this is the right fit for me. So just by getting on campus and getting that feel when you're there, regardless of whether it's a reach school, it's an easier school to get into, just getting on campus and getting that feeling of what a college campus is like is great.
Yeah. I remember when my kids were young, I started visiting colleges with them the summer after their sophomore year. And it felt a little bit early, but it was actually perfect for us because it allowed us to see them not feel so rushed with everybody else that was juniors trying to get in over spring break. It turned out to be a really good decision. And so I don't know if there is a perfect time, but definitely on the earlier side for sure. I like that point, Jen.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
another thing too is it's fun. I mean, I mentioned this to you before, Anne. I really enjoyed. My older son is a sophomore in college, and then I have got a younger son who's a junior in high school. So I'm right in the thick of it right now. And one of my most memorable times was the summer of his junior year. My older one, we just took a road trip. We took family road trips, and we would just go check out campuses, and we took our younger one with us. And it was just so much fun to not even visiting the campuses, but checking out the towns around the campus and see if it's just, the right fit for you.
I agree. It's so fun. It's
Yes,
so fun.
it
It's
is.
an adventure. All right. Let's shift gears. We have a couple of questions that I'm going to get to at the end. So please, if you have a question, throw it in the chat and we'll make sure we get to it. So one thing that's changing a lot within college admissions is the role of test scores. And Jen, I'm wondering if you could share with everybody what's happening with the SAT and ACT and what parents should be thinking about.
Sure. This has been a huge change, a big shift with this over the past couple of years, especially with COVID. So some schools, they were test optional for a long time. I mentioned that at the beginning of the webinar, many schools became test optional because of the pandemic. Some schools, and mainly the selective ones, are starting to move away from being test optional again, which was so popular. Test scores are a standard measure that is valuable in the evaluation of the student. And for that reason, they may never totally go away. Okay, so we have to be okay with that. Additionally, test scores are still important because they can be required for students to be eligible for merit scholarships or honors program consideration. So it's still very important for students to sit for a test and consider taking it at least 2 times to better their score. Okay. Things are constantly changing with college requirements. So what's going on now could easily look different in a few years. So that's why it's always good to keep your options open and take the test and prepare for it.
I totally agree with you. Sometimes we'll hear from kids that will say, "Oh, don't worry. Every college on my list is test optional." But is it really? It may say test optional, but for some schools, they still the kids that are getting in are the ones that submit test scores. So you kind of have to know the schools, and I know that's what you do a lot of, Jen, is helping guide them. And so that aside, when students are in high school, their very first encounter with this college admission standardized test is when they have the opportunity to take the PSAT. So the PSAT is the preliminary SAT, and it's not the same as the SAT. It's at a slightly lower level. So the scoring is a little bit different, but it is a great practice for the exam. It's given in October, and it depends on your school. Some schools, kids just take it in 11th grade. Some schools, kids can take it in 9th, 10th, and 11th. If your child has the opportunity and it's optional in 9th or 10th, they should absolutely take it. And if they say, "I don't want to do this," you say, "I really want you to." It's just practice. Nobody will see the score. Colleges do not get this score. It's not reported. But as you get older, if you take it in 10th grade and then in 11th, when you take it in 11th grade, if you do a really, really good job, you could qualify for the National Merit Scholarship. So this test is important just to kind of get your feet wet, as Jen mentioned, and potentially down the road for scholarship money. But then after the PSAT, kids can either take the SAT or the ACT. And it's important to understand the differences. In the school, the test that kids in your school will predominantly take really depends on region. So for example, if you live in Chicago, I bet most kids in that area are going to take the ACT. But if you live in the mid-Atlantic, like the Washington, D.C. area, most kids are going to take the SAT. It doesn't matter which test you take. And I'll share a little bit about that in a second. But colleges across the country take both tests. They totally do not care which test you submit. They just want to see a score. But it is important to know that there are differences between both tests. For example, the SAT, the new version, it's digital. So it's no longer on the Scantron book that you fill out and you bubble in the answers. It's online and it's adaptive, which means, let's say in math, there's 2 sections, math and reading and writing. In math, you take a section, and if you do a really, really good job, the next section you get is medium and hard questions. But if the section is hard for you, you're not going to get, your next section isn't going to be as difficult. That's the adaptive nature of it, and that's new with the SAT. sometimes people say it's a power test because the questions require some critical thinking. And the difficulty in this test is in the interpretation, in the analysis. Like, okay, what is this question really asking me to do? Or I'm not quite sure how to start solving this. We hear that a lot about the SAT. But if you live in the Mid-Atlantic area, and I saw a lot of people here from Virginia and Maryland, sometimes kids will take the PSAT at school and they'll just say, oh, I'm just familiar with this test. I'm just going to go with the SAT. Sometimes kids will say, you know what, I took the PSAT, I didn't do so great. Let me see how my SAT score is. And then if they don't love it, they'll say, I just want to try something different. And then we'll prepare them. We always recommend prep before taking the test. We'll prepare them to take the ACT. This test is different. It's not digital, it's paper. It's a little bit faster. You have to go at a faster clip. So the questions are shorter, but they're definitely more straightforward. So the difficulty in this test is in the pacing. It's in the speed at which you have to go to finish it. However, things are changing. Because the SAT went to this digital format and they made the test shorter, 2 hours instead of 3 hours, it took away business from the ACT. So guess what? The ACT said, oh, big changes, we're changing too. And they also did the same thing. Instead of a 3-hour test, now theirs is going to be 2 hours. They're going to give more time per question. The passages will be shorter. The scale is still the same, but the ACT, instead of just a math in a reading and writing section, it has math, English, and reading, and then there's a science section that's optional. So these changes are going to be for next year in the fall. And so if you're an 8th grader, a 9th grader, or a 10th grader, this is going to affect you later on. So you're probably not going to see the current version of the ACT. You'll see this new version. And I do think that a lot of kids are going to say, you know what, I'm going to try the ACT now because I didn't like this adaptive thing with the SAT. Let me see how I do on the ACT. If you do consider prep, which we do encourage you to consider it, you really want to pick one test and study for that test. Put your eggs in that basket instead of splitting your focus. So this typically happens the spring of your sophomore year. So here's what you should know. Choose your test. We're more than happy to help you. We help parents with this decision all the time and kids. You want to map out your plan, meaning when are you going to take the test? Typically, you take it in your junior year. And if you're unsure where to start, we offer mock tests. So let's say your child had the PSAT, took the PSAT, got a score. We can give them an ACT and figure out which tests they're going to do best on and recommend prep for that test. But typically we do that the spring of their sophomore year or their summer going into the junior year. But the key is to have a testing plan. So Jen, as we wrap up and go to Q&A in just a second, I wanted to share with everybody a college prep checklist that we developed. And this is really, really helpful because we've thrown a lot of things at you. Although, things will change from year to year in high school, there are certain things kids need to do in 9th grade and in 10th grade and 11th and 12th. So this will give you that little roadmap so that you know what to do at each grade level. And of course, we're happy to help you with this as well. But the link to download the copy, to download your free copy is in the chat. And so, as I mentioned, we are happy to help you in your process as you think about college admissions. We have specific programs for kids in 8th, 9th, and 10th grade that help with that whole journey. And it allows a strategic approach that you have the gift of time to make sure you've mapped out your courses, to make sure you've planned your summer well, and to start building your high school resume. And you can find out more about those services at ectutoring.com/college-counseling. Jen, thank you so much for being my guest tonight and for shedding light on how parents can help with the application process for younger students and how you help kids too.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. You've been such a great guest. I hope this was helpful to everybody. And please know that tomorrow we will send out a recap. And in it, we're going to highlight some of the things we talked about. You'll get a recording of this evening. And if you would like to touch base with us, we will have our contact information in there as well. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.